So welcome everyone to this panel discussion on strategic choice, expansion or sustenance. Dheeraj, who was to moderate this session, had to rush for helping Dr. Lakdawala in his fight against COVID. So as a last minute call, it required me to step up in his place. My name is Pankaj and I'll be the moderator for the panel discussion. We have a pretty eminent panel with us today. Let me quickly introduce the panel before I share with you the purpose, the outcomes, and the process for today's discussion. Let me start with Dr. Sachin Gupta. Sachin brings a rich experience of leading organizations like Parkway Panta in Singapore and Apollo Hospitals in India. He also plays a significant role in the task force of ICMR and Voice of Healthcare, a healthcare industry think tank. Currently, uh, he runs Salus Healthcare Resources, a foremost leadership advisory firm in healthcare sector that he founded some time ago. He has also co-founded Sri Venkateshwara Medicare recently. Welcome to the panel discussion session.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. Thanks for the kind introduction. And I'm happy to be with all my co-panelists and great audience, healthcare and other industries to be joining us. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, let me now introduce Mr. Vishal Gandhi. Vishal has over 20 plus years of experience. He's a biotechnologist and a management graduate from XLRI who worked with Yes Bank as head of healthcare and life sciences advisory. And the marquee deal that is credited to him is Medanta Hospital in Gurgaon. And he also worked with Ranbaxy and OnQuest, where he was the founding team member, and Dabur Research Foundation in senior positions. He founded BioRx, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Vishal, BIORX Venture Advisors Private Limited, which is an advisory company that has helped over 100 plus private healthcare organizations from India, both multiple and single specialty, medtech, pharma, and biotech, and 8 MNCs into their India entry strategy. Vishal has also mentored many organizations, including startups, through his involvement with various industry forums and CII of IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Delhi. Welcome to the panel discussion, Vishal.
Thank you, Pankaj, for your kind words.
I would now like to introduce Mr. Sunil Bhayana. Sunil worked in the pharma industry in wholesale and retail before founding Meditech Systems that distributes high-end medical devices. He also went on to co-found Cygnus Healthcare Private Limited that manages several secondary care and tertiary care hospitals in Haryana and Delhi. He also founded Medora Meditech that manufactures high-quality, cost-effective medical devices and accessories for gastroenterology. Welcome to the panel discussion, Sunil.
Thank you very much, Pankaj.
Mr. B.R. Jaju was to be our next panelist. However, he's running late. He will join us after about 20 minutes. But nevertheless, let me quickly introduce him as well. Mr. Jaju brings an enviable experience of over 42 years in several organizations like Wellspun, Crompton Greaves, Z Network, Reliance Petrochemicals, VIP Group, and Wipro, in most of which he was a CFO at a company or group level. Highly acclaimed for his work in finance, he has been recognized for several rewards. He also serves humanity through his association as a trustee with Jai Ganesh Charitable Trust and Meera Foundation. Currently, he is the executive director at DB Power. We'll welcome him once he joins. And our final panelist is Mr. Sanjay Dey. Sanjay, who's a company secretary by profession, brings vast experience in project financing, financial compliances, treasury management, financial due diligence, and commercial contracting in large MNCs in mining, steel, power generation, and EPC sectors. In recent years, he has been involved in debt resolution through several RBI guidelines. Welcome to the panel discussion, Sanjay.
Good afternoon, Pankaj. Thanks a lot for introducing me. Thank you.
All right. Let me now set the context for our panel discussion today. The current crisis has caused a lot of pain and impacted many organizations. For some, it has been a challenge to sustain their operations before they see growth. And yet, there are others who have managed to see opportunity amidst this crisis and are taking steps to deal with the impact and convert the pain into opportunity. The purpose of today's discussion is to get our experts to share their perspectives on what are the choices an organization can make to convert their pains into an opportunity, thereby riding out much stronger from the crisis. At the end of the discussion, we would have identified the top 3 to 4 common pain points that have had the highest impact on organizations and the top 3 choices that an organization can make to convert the most impactful pain points into an opportunity. My role is to guide the discussion through a series of questions. The discussion with the panelists will last for about 40 to 45 minutes. At the end, we will throw it open for any specific questions that our listeners may have. So let me start with the first question. And I'm going to request every panel member to respond to this question, one after the other. As you experience the COVID crisis, what are some of the types of pains that you find organizations facing as a result of this crisis?
So, hi, this is Sachin here. So,
Yes.
I believe, current COVID-19 crisis, unprecedented, unforeseen kind of phenomena. It was, hard to imagine 2 months back. So, if you look at recent past, the last crisis of similar kind, but not of similar scale was, SARS in 2009 and, Ebola, a couple of years back. But the scale of this crisis and the impact it has caused, the kind of economic injury that caused at the global scale is unprecedented. Organizations as well as countries have been caught, unprepared. So there is a lot of pain, there is massive job losses, there is, destruction of supply chains, and one dimension of this pandemic is that it is causing disruption which is not continuous, but discontinuous disruption, and is changing the environment very rapidly. So while we prepare just to changes of last few weeks, something new emerging, and it is causing some effects on the geopolitical situation also. Especially if we look at last couple of days, there was hostility between China and US related to this virus. And WHO was also party to this for the first time. But in last couple of days, India has also become a party to this. There is escalated tension at Indo-China border, and somewhere it is also related to COVID-19 crisis. All these situations will have a lot of impact. How things emerge over next few months to next couple of years. Thank you.
Yeah, Pankaj.
Yes, Neil.
Yeah, definitely there are a lot of pains during this time of crisis. We can use this word crisis, or it can be called as a transformation, because each and every business is going to be transformed. We have to find new ways and means that how we have to run business in future. Definitely, there are a lot of challenges we have been facing during this time of crisis, or we can say the transformation, whatever it is. But first and foremost, crisis that sales are diminishing, and there are weak consumer demand. Credit crisis is also there, and definitely increasing global trade barriers. There is one more challenge that we have been facing, that we have to take care of the employees' well-being also. And these are the major challenges across all industries and sectors. All the industries have been facing.
Thanks. Sanjay, do you want to go next?
Yes. I mean, most of the significant problems that I perceive today in all organizations across the board that might be facing right now. So first and foremost, I would say that their inability to make projections for the future. I mean, we as human beings, we always like to make a projection. But now the situation has turned. The COVID crisis has turned, the whole scenario so upside down. You are basically looking at a black box and trying to figure out that what kind of projections are to be made for each and every organization. Second thing, what I find is, one of the biggest pain is that the trust between employer and employee. Maintaining the trust level that, come what may, rain or shine, things are going to, everybody is going to carry the other to a better life. Third, what I feel is that because of the COVID crisis and the whole movement of money and the economy has stopped suddenly because of the lockdown and other things that the government has decided to implement. Recovery of funds, so recovery of money, as well as redeploying those working capital has become a challenge. Basically, that the whole system, which used to be run on payment of liability, and the person getting the money paying it forward has stopped, which is actually making it more painful for every organization in order to recover their own money from their customers, and then paying off their vendors, which is virtually bringing the whole wheel to a halt actually. Different kinds of challenges or pains right now. Once we slowly climb back to our manufacturing positions, the question is that to estimate that and how to boost that demand is another quite a significant pain which the organizations are facing, who have already started and are likely to face when they start in full mode. So basically, capacity utilization questions will always remain. And then realigning priorities. I mean, what is more important is probably the most painful of decisions that most of the organizations are now exposed to within their limited resources. So I would say these 4 or 5 points are the most painful points when we look at from an organization perspective. Yes, Pankaj.
Thanks, Sanjay. Vishal, would you share your perspective?
Thank you, Sachin, Sunil, and Sanjay for setting the good tone. So I feel, in terms of opportunity, Corona actually has been an opportunity, but there are two kinds of opportunity I would like to say. One is an internal opportunity, which is within the organization, and the second is which is outside the organization, which is more external. So I think externally, if you look at, there are some sectors which have actually taken a huge advantage, and we know automation, we know telecommunication, we know healthcare, but internally, if you look at what Sanjay spoke about, I think there are largely internal challenges. And I felt that how these internal challenges can be an opportunity during COVID time. I think one needs to do a little bit of micromanagement. For example, that I've been in touch with some of my clients, and I've been advising them to negotiate, better debt deal. Like if they were getting at 11, can they go back to their bankers saying that okay, let's do a deal at 9. So how can we bring the cost of capital down? Which will essentially create a value. That's the one very, very, I would say, a low-hanging fruit that one can actually, go back to the bankers and work upon. Secondly, is that a lot of companies that we were advising, they were looking for equity funding. And I feel that this is the precise time for them to become flexible, because some of the equity deals which were not happening because of the valuation mismatch, but this is the precise time where, it is not about how many multiples of valuation will I get in terms of PAT or EBITDA. But, it's about how do I survive, and it's a question of sustenance, expansion is important, but I think one needs to think that what kind of expansion, what kind of model I want to build as far as expansion is concerned. So I feel it's a great opportunity to transform internally, how to become an agile organization, how to respond to the situation so that your DNA of the organization can be much value creative, whether in terms of cost of capital, whether it's about human resource rationalization. Within my own organization, actually, I've done human resource rationalization. I have seen that, if I were doing 5 activities, I am actually able to do 10 of them now myself, So I'm sure, like all the organizations have actually come forward and seen that how this crisis could be an opportunity to rationalize cost. And because, everybody says the cash is king, and it's important to conserve the cash. So there are ways, because we know there are no OPDs. We know there are no revenue per day, per bed, which is going to go up, So how do we ensure that with the limited capital that we're sitting with, I think how do we sustain for rather than sustaining for 6 months, can I actually keep a horizon of 12 months of working capital? Because bankers may shy away from giving too much of capital. Bankers may have issues because we may have exhausted collaterals. So I think there are lots of challenges, which I personally feel it's something which one can turn into opportunity if you look within and sit with your leadership team and see that what are the areas that I can actually, reduce my cost while not compromising on the quality of the healthcare services that I am delivering, because healthcare is all about quality. So we are not here to cut down on quality, but I think we're here to actually see that what are those, things that actually can still maintain the quality and yet, the cost can be conserved. So I think this is what pointer I want to share in the beginning.
Thanks, Vishal. You moved it slightly towards the opportunity. But for the moment, I just want to bring it back, and all of you shared quite a few pains that organizations are beginning to face as an outcome of this crisis. Which of these, and I'm not going to list all of them that you mentioned, but from your perspective, which of these have been the most painful for the organizations to look at? Of the several pains that you mentioned. And let me take a reverse order right now. Yeah.
So I think receivables, like I remember, the day lockdown was announced, I myself was sitting with good receivables, and I started calling out my clients. I said, boss, this is the time for me to, get my payment. And they said, boss, let's not talk about it. And I said, okay, let's look at the lockdown one, when it gets exhausted. So on April 14th, I think we did get a signal that, that it is going to continue and we're going to get into lockdown 2. But I think with the, patience and with the right dialogue and with the right intention, things did happen in terms of, the same clients came back and they started praying. So I'm sure even for all the healthcare organization, because we are an ecosystem provider for healthcare, I'm sure, even government, has announced that TDS refunds to be expedited. So that was a great step, I think, and I'm sure healthcare organizations did get some benefit. Then there are so many packages that have been announced, which are also multiplied, I have a multiplied effect to the healthcare organization. SIDBI came out with the fantastic scheme. So I think there are overall great amount of challenges that were there. But then all those challenges, how we could turn into an opportunity, I'm sure within the healthcare organization, it's something which all of them could do it diligently, and I'm sure they would have created value.
Sure. Someone else? What's your perspective of the most painful challenges? Sorry, Sanjay, Sunil was getting up the
Yes.
mic. Yes, Sunil.
Yeah. Yes, Sunil.
Definitely, receivables are definitely the great challenge. And because if you look at the hospital scenario, most of the hospitals in metro cities have patient load in the range of 10 to 20%. Definitely, this cycle is working reversely, and it is going to be a great challenge for us in future as well. At present, definitely all the companies are facing challenges in receivables. But if this situation continues, it is going to be a great challenge for all the medical devices and pharmaceutical companies to recover their amounts from the hospitals and the pharmaceutical distributors. Definitely, this is the foremost challenge that we have been facing. But definitely in future, there is seems to be any recovery in near future, because there are estimates that this healthcare sector is going to accrue losses in the range of 20,000 to 24,000 crores of rupees, and during this lockdown.
So you reinforced the receivables or recovery of receivables as the biggest challenge.
It is the biggest challenge because workload is too low. Workload is too low in the hospitals, particularly in the metro city hospitals.
Yeah. Others, which are some of the other most painful or challenging challenges for the organizations today because of COVID?
So as I said, there have been massive job losses across various industry segments. At the same time, there is also shortage of skilled manpower, especially in healthcare. Where we didn't have enough of trained nurses and paramedics who can take care of COVID patients. And this problem is persisting, and it is pan India, and it's a global problem because already there was shortage of nurses and paramedics. So COVID-19 has actually kind of underscored that globally we were not prepared to address this kind of pandemic. I think this availability of skilled manpower or trained um, um, trained physicians and other people who can take care of patients is a major challenge. In this crisis, other than of course cash flows, accounts receivables, disruption of supply chain. Then travel is not happening. Also not only internationally but within states also there is limit to how you can travel. And when we talk about hospital industry, there is decline in volume of elective surgery, and then international medical tourism, which used to be a major source of revenue for healthcare providers of in India, is it's practically zero over last few months.
So, Sanjay, you want to add to this? Sanjay, would you like to add to what you believe are the most painful challenges? I've heard 4 so far. Let me just quickly share those. One is the recovery of receivables. Second is the shortage of skilled manpower. Third is the disruption of supply chain. And fourth is the whole revenue sources drying up. And in the context of medical, it's about medical tourism. So, anything that you want to add to
apart from this, it is now very important, and one of the biggest pain points probably every management, CEOs and CFOs are facing is realigning priorities and setting up a business line. Your conventions, your conventional practices, etc., has been broken down now, and therefore, what to do in order to get back to shape? Now there are two questions: what to do, number one, and get back to shape. Now, what is the shape? That shape has become so obscure today that whether you are doing a 10,000 crore, kind of a revenue pie, or whether you are doing a 10 crore pie, you do not know what is going to be the shape. And therefore, when you do not have a goal, your biggest pain point at this point in time, every management faces is that how to realign your priorities, whether to focus on sustenance, whether to focus on a growth, whether to how to approach your customers. These are all very valid questions which are ringing in everybody's mind right now. So I think realigning priorities is the biggest way, because unless we chart a course of action for the future, considering that there is COVID and no COVID, we are not going anywhere. So I think realigning priorities is one of the largest challenges that everybody who is a decision maker is facing right now. Recovery of capital, whether it happens today or tomorrow, it will happen. In most of the cases, it will happen. But the only thing is that then you deploy. How do you redeploy that money? How do you, in which section of your business are you going to redeploy that money? That is one of the biggest challenges right now, Pankaj.
So, what's the impact of all these? All of you have talked about 5 big challenges. What's been the impact of these challenges on the organizations that you see?
Yeah, if I can take that question forward.
Yes.
The biggest challenge that we have been talking about is mostly related to capital recovery, paying your vendors, etc. But there is a much larger problem that we are unable to see, not only in the context of healthcare as we see, but in a larger context. That larger context being, like for instance, if you are a manufacturer of steel, now your furnaces cannot be shut down and restarted the next day. You need huge amount of money in order to restart your furnace, because once it cools down, you have to change the entire lining, etc., in order to put that back into action. Now, apart from the fact that you have not been able to recover, or you have been able to recover, now this is an additional operating cost which is going to hit your business the moment you try to restart. Now, everything moves around capital. The second part of it is that any business, be it in the healthcare segment or any other segment, the problem is that that every businesses which are of a reasonable size will be dependent on some sort of a debt or a capital out in the market. Now, certain things which are not defined right now, how these assessments are going to be made of these organizations which have slipped drastically over this period of time. At this point, no clarity in the system that what is going to be the rating. Because everything in the financial world moves around the rating of the enterprise in order to get a pricing. As Vishal probably was mentioning, that go back to the banks and say, okay, it was doing at 11, now can we look at 8, 8.5? Well, the market is 8.5. But there are certain systems and processes which has to be put in over there that if you are of a particular rating grade, that is where you can avail these kind of interest, because interest is linked to your ratings in most of the banks. The question is that how these ratings are going to pan out going forward, that we are not sure right now. And therefore, even though we talk about optimizing the situation and bringing down our external costs, it is still quite a few miles away. Still we are grappling with this understanding that what is going to be the next move in terms of how these businesses are going to be rated after the post-COVID era. So, I mean, I think this is the most painful point. That though we may be talking about optimizing our borrowing costs, etc., and a lot of costs, likely, but we really do not know that what is the rock bottom of that. We are still in a spiral right now, moving down every day. We are not, we have not been able to, put ourselves saying that, okay, this is the dead end, now we got to revert back from here. So we are still in a spiral, and I think it's going to take quite a bit of time, maybe, according to me, another 45 days before we can understand where is the end of the spiral and where to turn back.
So the whole uncertainty leading to this confusion has been one of the impacts of all these pain points.
Yeah.
Sure. Vishal, Sunil, Sachin, would you like to add any of you? You're on mute, Vishal.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what Sanjay shared about, that healthcare companies, credit rating. So pre-COVID, 60% of healthcare organizations, which means the hospitals, multi-specialty, single specialty, they were all actually non-investment grade. But post-COVID, I think 85% will become triple B minus. So I think even going back to the banquet, that asking for negotiation is also going to be the toughest challenge. But I think seeing that challenge doesn't mean that we should not go for it. I think it's steps in the right direction, and we must go back. And I'm sure being healthcare a very humanitarian business, and today I think if we don't actually respond to healthcare businesses, all the stakeholders, I think we will lose an opportunity to be able to create value for the humanity. So I think bankers are also really coming forward with various wonderful schemes which are actually to address this COVID mismatch, I would say, because the COVID opportunity is huge from a business perspective. And how, if you get a right working capital, how you could turn this into opportunity, I think this is the balance which even RBI today is shuffling between the RBI and Supreme Court. I think there is a kind of a petition which is filed that, how are we going to make our health organizations, more competitive, especially during COVID time. What I hear in Mumbai, there are no ICU beds. Whereas in Delhi, there may be many more lines. How do we realign this? No. Yeah. So this is the perspective I wanted to share right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Vishal. So actually, you shared an alternate perspective, which is about for the healthcare industry how this is actually becoming an opportunity, and that's the impact. That's the positive impact of these pains or the challenges. Others, Sachin, Sunil, your perspective on what's been the impact on organizations because of these challenges?
I think I'll go with Vishal and Sanjay, and Sanjay was very right in pointing out that we don't know where is the bottom, and we are just navigating our aeroplane in turbulent weather. And when I started, I also somewhere highlighted that the scenario is changing very rapidly, and before we can take corrective action, the scenario again changes. So I think the key to success in COVID-19 situation is going to be
how rapidly a company, whether it is a startup or is it a large-scale organization, how rapidly they are able to understand the challenges posed by the current environment. What are the interventions they undertake to mitigate those risks, and how fast they undertake these interventions so that they can have proper or efficient utilization of their resources and create a sustainable business. So if some organization which is able to get all these three parameters right, they'll be able to sustain in long run and grow.
Right. So understanding challenges, taking on the interventions, and utilizing resources properly.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. And this is definitely one impact of all the challenges.
Right.
Sunil, your perspective before we move to the co-work.
Pankaj, if you tell about the what business we are into, our products are mainly for the cancer patients.
Yeah.
If we look at that during these 2 months, the demand is too low during all the during this lockdown period.
Sure.
Demand is too low. Even the cancer patients are not going to the hospitals. They are so scared for this coronavirus. And one more problem, basically, if you look at that, particularly in the Delhi and NCR hospitals, in Delhi government decided that all the hospitals are going to admit the corona patients. Even this kind of situation prevails, then rest of the specialties, rest of the patients are not going to enter the hospitals. Again, this is going to be the reverse side. Whatever the revenues they were about to generate from the general kind of OPDs, if all the hospitals are going to convert it into corona patients hospital, rest of the specialties are going to become zero. This is again a challenge.
Understood. Yeah, so it's also an impact where if the focus is on COVID or corona, then the revenue generation of other specialties will get impacted. So let me, you mentioned about the various impact, the various pains and the impacts that it's happening on the organizations, and we heard the top 5 pain. What are some of the options or the choices that organizations have to be able to or need to make to be able to deal with all these impacts and these pains?
So, Pankaj, if you allow me, I can take this.
Yeah. Yes, Vishal.
So I think it's a time to look at debt to equity ratio. I think a lot of organizations are, leveraged very heavily, especially healthcare. So can we use this opportunity to invite equity partners to actually leverage our balance sheet? That's, I think, the foremost point to make it sustainable. And then, how we can turn asset heavy businesses into asset light. This is something, I would say it will go with each business model within healthcare, because pharma follows a different business model versus a hospital versus biotech. But I think within that, there is an opportunity to make balance sheet lighter for sure, and how we can use this opportunity to make the balance sheet lighter. That's another point I wanted to share. The third point, I feel that, it's also time to really focus and identify what is my core and what is my known core. Can I actually, liquidate my known core, which otherwise I would have just continued for 5 more years, and after 5 years, I would have realized, it was not worth. It was a drag on my balance sheet. Can I actually now divest that, and raise the capital so that either whether I invite an equity player from outside or I increase my own equity to be able to deleverage the balance sheet and create a sustainable organization? I think that's a third point which every organization must look at. Whether it is the super specialty hospital or a single specialty, and fourth is, I personally feel digital healthcare is something which a lot of doctors, a lot of healthcare organizations were really scared of. But today, all those guys who were scared of, they couldn't even monetize their OPD, and they had no other option but to adopt to telemedicine. So I think telemedicine has done a wonderful trick. Had it been a normal situation, this telemedicine would have only got fillip in 2025. But because of Corona, telemedicine has actually become a mainstream. And as Mr. Bayana said that, other specialties will take a hit. But I think with continuous telemedicine intervention, maybe when the times are right, one can ensure that, the other specialties do contribute, because there is a planned surgery for some of them, So I think there is a way to manage that, how not to leak that revenue which should have otherwise accrued to your balance sheet. So these are 4-5 pointers I thought are very good, and happy to have others talking about it or supplementing it. Yeah.
Sure. So let me throw the question to the others. What are some of the choices that organizations have or need to make to be able to deal with these pains and impacts?
So I think Vishal very correctly highlighted importance of asset-light business, and how digital technologies like AI, telemedicine are going to uh, uh, help healthcare providers to create some sustainable business models. The government also is very proactive. I mean, the government also understood and realized the importance of use of such technologies in near future. And the telemedicine regulations which were pending there for last many years were actually, the government came out with a telemedicine regulatory, bill, or whatever document they call it, in March itself, and implemented and gave a lot of impetus to telemedicine and teleconsultation. At the same time, I think there is an opportunity. India is a knowledge-based economy, and we probably have the largest pool of doctors globally. So, using technology, like AI, digital health, probably this is the time whereby though physical medical travel might have stopped, so this is high time when we can actually export our clinical services, or OPD consultation services, and extend them to countries beyond India through telemedicine, or within India also, in areas of.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Sachin. Sunil, Sanjay, any perspective you want to add of choices that?
Yeah, as Vishal and Sachin rightly said, then definitely it is the time that we should move over to telemedicine and artificial intelligence. But at the same time, if we look at the current scenario, if you look at the metro city hospitals, the hospitals have workload in the range of 10 to 20%. If you look at the workload in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, there is workload is around 70 to 80%. It means that the patients whosoever was traveling to metro cities from tier 2 or tier 3 cities are staying there in their own cities, and they are trying to get them treated at the nearby hospitals rather than moving towards the metro cities. And definitely for the metro city hospitals or corporate hospitals, it is a time to rethink that they should have a light asset model in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and they should use artificial intelligence and telemedicine to generate the revenue and keep the patients with themselves.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sanjay. You would like to add?
Yeah, to add to that, I would just point out, I mean, looking at the current situation and the healthcare segment and every other segment for that matter, I would list out a few, options or actions which has to be taken by every organization, be it in the healthcare segment or any other segment, in order to remain fit and thrive at a later point in time. I would say avail government support. Whatever the schemes are coming in, make yourself ensure that you are, included in those government support schemes in order to give you that little bit of space, out of your in the finance your requirement, to give you that space in order to bounce back and keep yourself still ticking. Second is, I'm going to say that reinvent yourself. As we discuss about telemedicine, taking an approach, everybody has to reinvent, and probably this is much more required at this point in time, that how you're going to run your processes. And you have to shift your fixed nature of components into variable nature of components more and more. That is a short-term to medium-term strategy that everybody has to look at. So anything that is fixed in nature has to move to a more variable and a more flexible kind of an expenditure nature, which is going to conserve your working capital in any segment of the business. Third, I would say, as Sunil was saying, regarding people, and there are two things now that the customer profile and habits have changed. If you're saying that your people would come from smaller cities to larger cities in order to get medical health care, now because of the lockdown, they are going to stay back over there. What I perceive is that it is going to be like that for quite a bit of time. So coupled with that asset-light model, you'll have to bear your people along with the opportunities. So anything with you have the quality manpower which is sitting out in a metropolitan city has probably now, it's the need in order to move them out of the tier 1 cities into tier 2 cities, in order to take advantage of that opportunity. The skill set is available. The skill set did not disappear. The skill set pre-COVID, pre-lockdown and post-lockdown are going to be the same. The question is that whether you are closer to the market or not. And the preference of the customers have always, it is already changed. Now today, if you have a small kind of an ailment with a little bit of a bank balance, you don't want to take a flight or a train for the fear that there might be a corona infection over there. And therefore, you would try to avail of localized services. Second is how you communicate has become very important more than anything else. Now, a Fortis or a Medanta hospital for that matter, how it communicates with its client base probably has to be redesigned completely now. As we talk about moving it from the metropolitan city into smaller city centers with asset-light model, etc., probably your communication would also have to be in sync with that model, that how you're talking to the external world. And people's preferences have changed. And then in the short term, I would say that with the government support, any other avenues like raising of capital, maybe at the undervaluation, would actually give you a good opportunity in order to have a liquidity, in order to look into or move into the second opportunity. When we are talking about moving a center out of a metropolitan city into a smaller city, we are essentially talking about investment of some capital. Now, this capital has to either be internal or external. Internally, if one can generate, nothing like it, but even an external help has to be taken in terms of private equity. I think, this is not the time to talk about valuations right now. It is more like whether you are going to be ready and fit in order to take the next bus to thrive in. So, these are some of the points I think that every organization should be looking at in order to create, convert this, impossible situation into a very good possibility.
Great, thanks. You have shared quite a few possibilities of converting, dealing with the pains and the challenges. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share and I hope this is visible to all. So this is what I heard, and before I request any of you to summarize and talk about the top 3 effective choices to convert pain to opportunity, here's what I heard. So we spoke of the top common points being the recovery of receivables, shortage of skilled manpower, disruption of supply chain, drying up of revenue services, and realigning priorities to decide whether sustenance or growth. And to deal with these are choices I heard from all of you. To invite equity participation, become asset light, focus on core and non-core, and therefore liquidate the non-core, go digital, and in the context of the healthcare industry, do telemedicine, teleconsulting, use technology or artificial intelligence and leverage the available manpower. I also heard about reinventing, which is shifting fixed components to variable or fixed flexible components, relocating the skill sets to where the opportunity or the lies or closer to the market, and redesigning communication with client base. So just to bring this to a close before we throw it open to the listeners for questions, which of these do you think would cut across organizations and be the most effective choices to convert pain to an opportunity?
Pankaj, I think these choices,
Yeah.
point number 2, become asset light, rather it should be addition asset light. Additional for the corporate, whatever the portfolio they have. I think they should add, not become.
Sorry, additional asset light, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They should start with the satellite centers or some kind of hub and spoke model.
Right. Sure. So which of these, from your perspective, would be the top 3 or most effective choices to convert the pain to opportunity?
Yeah, if I have to comment in terms of priorities, I would rather say reinvent. Point number 6 is going to be the top of. Second is going to be your redesigning of your communication client, communications with the client. And third, I would say relocate skill after understanding that what is the behavior pattern of the client post COVID. So if I have to look at those priorities, I'll put it like that. See, everything what I feel is.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Sanjay.
Yeah, when I talk about reinventing, I also bring the attention to the above 3 points, 2, 3, and additional asset. Make that like focus on the core and go digital. These are all part of the reinventing process.
Okay.
So all these are covered into that particular word saying reinventing. So I will put reinventing first. That if you have got the time, no more traffic snarls and no more evening parties to attend. So I would rather say that this time can be put into reinventing your processes, your systems, and everything, and giving it a very fresh, new, different perspective post-COVID. Second is redesign your communication with the client base. That is where you get to understand where does the opportunity lie. That is where you start getting the feeders from your client base that what they are essentially looking at. And then you start relocating your skill set and create an asset light model. That would be my order of preference when I look at the scenario.
All right. Someone else, Vishal, would you like to sort of take it forward and summarize as well? Because we need to move to the questions for the listeners. You're on mute, Vishal.
This is Sachin here.
Yeah.
So I'll agree both with Mr. Sunil and Mr. Sanjay, but I'd like to, and especially the order which Sanjay said, I think he's mentioning the right order. The only thing I want to elaborate more about, communicating with the customer is this is the right time when we build, right kind of bridges or bond with our customer and tell them, we are not here only to sell, but we are here to serve you in the long term. And communicate effectively. So I mean, on the why I'm saying this, in recent weeks we have actually seen spurt of people or companies who have been supplying masks, protective equipment, sanitizers, and various other things. Same time, so there has been issues related to quality such things. So many of the companies were just opportunistic enough to realign or redesign their business and start catering this without taking care of the quality of material, including some of the healthcare providers of the smaller scale who actually were doing it. So in the long run, just using these tactics and selling anything is not going to be very fruitful for anybody. I think. This is the high time when we bond with our customers in a way that they respect you, and I think we need to communicate very effectively with our customers that we are fair to you.
All right. Okay, Vishal, would you like to have the last word and sum this up so that we can throw it open to the listeners?
Yeah. So I think from my perspective, when I use word reinventing, I would say reinventing from 360 degree, the way organizations are functioning pre-COVID and the way they are functioning today. I think there is a reinvention of each and every process within the organization which needs to be done, and thereby creating I would say a value. So reinvention is certainly one point. Second is about focusing on expansion, because we are here for a big opportunity. I shouldn't be saying that like Corona is an opportunity, but actually it has turned out to be an opportunity for all the healthcare organizations, whether you're in pharma, whether you're in biotech. Look at the kind of 99 kind of candidates are there for clinical vaccine for Corona, which otherwise wouldn't have happened. But the kind of money which is getting into it, and of course this will create a lot of bioeconomy. So I feel that reinvention, then disruption of supply chain is very important. I think the there is a need for companies, healthcare organizations to think how they can do backward integration and the forward integration to be able to actually create better return on equity. Whether they have been equity funded doesn't matter, or whether they are privately funded. So I think it's an opportunity for all the healthcare organizations to look at forward and a backward integration, and some of them actually have done it. I know some pharma companies which have set up hospitals, and there are some hospital organizations which have actually set up herbal sanitizer company, or they're looking at how they can serve the same client so that their margins are protected, and thereby it ensures expansion and the sustenance. So that is what I would like to share, apart from what other able colleagues have shared.
All right, great. Thank you so much, all of you. I'm now going to share with you some of the questions that our listeners have. All right, so the first question is, any suggestions for biomed engineers who go for sales, application and servicing of medical equipment where telemedicine may not be a fit?
So while somebody else was taking it up, please.
So I think Sachin, you are good. Please go ahead. I'll supplement if possible.
Okay. So while we talked about opportunities in telemedicine, I'll say telemedicine is not the only opportunity, and it's high time all stakeholders, be it physicians, be it biomedical engineers. So we all need to innovate and come out with cost-effective solutions. And biomedical engineers, they can contribute a lot. You can develop some sort of cost-effective biomedical instruments, or some other interesting technologies which can actually bring down the cost of healthcare, or cater patients who are suffering from corona. So that'd be my little advice. Just focus on innovation. We are a knowledge-driven economy, as I said. So you can indulge in research-driven activities and create something not only for India but for the world. Yes, Vishal, you want to add on something?
Yeah, sure. So I think first I would like to congratulate to the person who's a biomedical engineer asking this question, because the kind of contribution he can make now is awesome. This is the perfect time. So I think Prime Minister in his address, he said that we were not having enough ventilators. But actually in last 2 months, how companies which have diversified, companies like Maruti Suzuki had no healthcare background. The companies like Mahindra had no healthcare background, but actually they have contributed to the development ventilators. So I think going forward, the kind of contribution that you as a biomedical engineer can make is humongous. And as long as we have equipments, there will always be a maintenance required. And maintenance of biomedical business itself is a huge opportunity. And I'm sure it was a big opportunity, but it'll continue to be bigger. And so do watch out for it, and you are in the right business. Go ahead.
All right, great. Thanks. That was from Rajan Tanvi. The next question, and perhaps we only have time for this one, is what will be the branding and marketing models for hospitals in the post-COVID era? This has been asked by Mohammad Lasan Ghori.
So Mr. Bahana wants to share first because he has a wonderful experience of hospital management.
Yeah, right. Definitely everything is going to be digital henceforth. And most of the conferences, even trade shows are going to be digital for quite some time, whatever the situation comes in future. But for some time, it seems to be that all the hospitals' promotions, conferences and trade shows are going to be digital. That is the only way. Even we look at that today, what is happening. Even Mercedes, Skoda and Sony, they are also promoting their products, introducing their products by digital mode only.
Yeah, so I very well agree with Mr. Bahana. I feel that every hospital or any healthcare organization, even a doctor's clinic, will have their own app, So earlier, like Practo and many more companies came forward, but now we do see that there are lots of white label solutions which are available, and everybody will go live on the app, because that's the only way to actually yet be there with the client or a patient, but yet maintain social distance and not actually not use this opportunity, which is actually an opportunity. So I think automation, digital is the future, and you can't live without it. And so Corona has given us that opportunity.
So that seems to be a big choice that organizations have to make to go digital. All right, one last one, and this is Rajan's response to the earlier question or a follow-up. Any suggestions on ozone as disinfection technology in healthcare segment? Is it feasible? Looks like there's a question that Sachin may need to answer.
So I think every technology has its own limitations and benefits. So ozone as a technology, I haven't read much about it, but it needs to be tested in the laboratory, and experiments needs to be conducted, and then only one can say. But this is my limited knowledge. But there are other technologies like microwave, which has been far tested for even for coronavirus protection. So there are many more technologies, but I have no idea about ozone.
Yeah, ozone technology is being used to disinfect the endoscopes, particularly to disinfect endoscopes. And it is quite common for the reprocessing of the endoscopes. Ozone technology is being used.
Sachin, would you like to add to your experience?
I actually don't have any specific, since I haven't read about use of ozone technology, particularly for COVID, so I won't be able to comment on this. Yeah, I'll leave it to the other panelists.
Oh, all right. Okay, I think so. That's the questions, and I hope it was quite informative and useful for all the listeners. Personally, I found it quite revealing and engaging. So thank you very much, all the panelists. Thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to the feedback from all the listeners. Thank you.